Hi there, everyone. My name's Sarah. I'm from Myosh. Welcome to today's webinar, which is on the four-step methodology for reopening business. I'm going to hand over to Jeremy Liu in just a moment. He's the General Manager of Certification for Bureau Veritas, and he'll be presenting today's webinar on behalf of Bureau Veritas. Before we hand over to Jeremy, I just want to say you can answer questions in the ask questions in the Q&A panel, which is on your webinar software. And also we will send out a recording and a podcast of the presentation probably tomorrow. I'll also drop a link in the chat to future webinars. The next webinar will be next, we have one on next Tuesday on a risk assessment module that we've just released for pandemics, and also next Thursday, contractor management obligations, risks and challenges, and that's on June the 4th. So over to you, Jeremy, and thank you for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you, Sarah, and thanks, Myosh, to give us the opportunity to present today. So, hi, everyone. Before we start on the topic, very briefly about who we are. So, Bureau Veritas, it's a global company with international presence in about 140 countries, and we've got basically expertise in testing, inspection, and certification for, I suppose, nearly 200 years. In Australia, our footprint, we've got about 1,800 people providing regulatory industrial inspections, engineering services, anything related to lab testing. So for minerals, food lab, we provide building certification, and basically I myself look after the ISO management system and product certification across the Pacific. So it's a fairly large organization. So now moving to the topic. So basically we're seeing that after, I guess, several weeks of lockdown, companies and institutions are gradually preparing to restart activity. So some of them have restarted already, but with a very single priority in mind, which is to guarantee the health and safety of the employees, customers, and any users, basically. So as we all hear, society may not change radically, but for sure there'll be what they call a new normal. So I'm sure you've seen it's all over the news, all over social media. And until basically a vaccine is found, we will have to live and continue to move forward alongside the virus. So that means that we need to go back to work, need to go back to our local shops, kids will go back to schools and basically any other public places, and we'll have to interact with people. It's not something we can avoid. No doubt that the pre-crisis lifestyle will return eventually, but under very different conditions and with new rules. And one of the questions that would be on the back of everybody's mind is that are all the measures that are taken collectively and individually effective, well implemented, and sufficient to basically protect us? So from a business point of view, as you're all aware, one of the key challenges would be to rebuild trust so that life can resume, little by little, and with peace of mind. So to meet that challenge, companies will need to address health, safety, and hygiene issues as they return to work and act transparently. So all the organizations, they're thinking about what processes to put in place, how to best proceed, and when it's done, how to reassure the employees, customer, users, and any stakeholders, basically the society, that they have taken all the protective measures required by the situation. This crisis is obviously a health challenge, but also a business challenge that invites us to rethink all work and organizational processes as we knew it. So to meet these particular needs, basically Bureau Veritas at global level has developed a dedicated services offer to support business recovery. So we call that Restart Your Business with BV. So that's under this banner, and the specific product called Safeguard. So I'll give you more details in the next few slides, but Restart Your Business with BV is basically, it consists of a site assessment solution designed to verify implementation of health protocols. it is, as you can see on that one, it's basically applicable to very different sort of companies from all size and sectors, as well as any establishments open to the public. So you can see that it's valid from what we call B2B2C. The hospitality sector is basically pretty big on that, So the service started on the back of a global agreement we have with Accor Group to audit basically about 3,000 hotels worldwide. Banks are interested as well, all the branches, to give comfort to the customers that they can come back to the local branch. Obviously, retail and shopping malls, restaurants, leisure, so we like cinema and like anything like that. Also valid for what we call the B2B in the private sector, so industrial sites, corporate building, construction sites, and the final one is B2B within the public sector, so schools, public transports, any public building, and sports, basically, which is another big one at the moment. How does this work? So we'll go in more detail in a minute, but basically what it works is that we define a list of control points with our clients, and this is based on good practices, protocols, procedures that needs to put in place. We conduct an independent audit to make sure that it's been implemented at site level. If the facility pass the audit, we grant them a label and a certificate and give them access and list them basically on a global consumer website that I'm going to show you later as well. The first step for us is to define the list of control points. So, of course, establishing health and safety protocols is essential for your facility or your site to understand the mitigation measures to be implemented. So health protocols, they all have a common basis, and it's about social distancing and basic hygiene measures. So now, after those two elements, there's a need to understand the specific challenges of each business sector, as this will determine the additional requirements and basically recommendation that must be considered. So measures that you're going to take, they need to be tailored to the physical environment of your site. So an office obviously is not the same as a hotel or restaurants, a workshop or public facility. So when we look at those things, obviously organizing, for example, how people move around, how you plan shift, how you put up the office layout, so those are just a few examples, but it's very important to consider, like I'll put some example of the element, in that slide, but basically policies that you may have, procedures you may have, and more importantly, how you communicate that to your staff. Anything around physical, social distancing, hygiene, disinfection, prevention, personal protective equipment. So how you deal with that, and how you stock that, and all this sort of thing. Employee protection, supplier management. If you got a lot of suppliers coming to your facility, how do you manage this? And then anything related to equipment, which has probably not been discussed enough, I guess, in communication that we can see at the moment. So anything around air circulation. A good example is around Legionella risk. It's always an example I like using. So if your facility is using, for example, hot water system, and talking about showers, any hot water basically that could be used, if there is some pool or anything like that, Legionella is a huge risk. So if someone is basically catching Legionella, they got about 11% chance to basically die from Legionella disease. So which, when with COVID, it's I think it's something like 0.5%. So it's a very risky element, and just to give you a hint, you need to increase the temperature above 60 degrees and let the tap run for about 20 minutes. So that's how you get rid of it. But yeah, all those things need to be considered as well. Another important challenge, I guess, to be faced by many large organizations is related to supply chain. So even if you are ready to restart, how can you ensure that your supply chain and your suppliers are basically not at risk? And if you can't get your product, how do you operate? So it's another challenge there. So what we've done, basically, like internally, we've got a lot of experts and people working as hygienists and stuff like that. So in the past 2 months, they've been working in collecting all data and information publicly available from reliable sources, such as the World Health Organization, the International Labour Organization, and so on, and put together some guidelines and checklists based on the on most recognized best practice and recommendation. As I said, the first step for us is to collectively, with the client, define the control points that they will be independently audited against. So, and these are critical. That's a critical step. So if you don't have guidelines, if you don't have protocols, so we're here to help. You can access, our work in that space and basically try to put things in place to follow best practices. When we've determined the control points, what we do is to break that into questions, and we send that as a self-assessment questionnaire for each facility to assess their readiness for an audit. So we believe that it's giving, it's probably a better approach. We've seen different clients with different needs. So some clients would request us to do a remote audit before coming to site. We've seen that from experience, a self-assessment questionnaire works really well. So the facility basically answers all those questions, send that back to us, and we can assess their readiness for an audit. The self-assessment questionnaire typically covers 4 main elements. So anything related to process, so policies, procedures that are being developed to protect employees, maintain business continuity. Anything related to hygiene, to maintain basically good hygiene in the premises. Anything related to people, and basically people behavior is the number one factor that we need to look at. So social distancing, wearing PPE, and how they protect themselves from the situation. And anything related to the facilities, as I mentioned before, anything related to the inspection regime and stuff like that. So when the self-assessment questionnaire is reviewed, we determine, we schedule basically an audit, and this audit is conducted by an experienced BV health and safety professional. And the idea here is to really evaluate the effectiveness and application of the measures implemented at the site. So obviously it's easy to put, well, relatively easy, I guess, to put things on paper. What we do is to independently check that this has been implemented. So nothing different from what you might have experienced, when we talk about inspections, audits, or anything like that. But we do this through documentation review, obviously, visual observations of activities, and also interviews with local site personnel. So each control point that we identified previously is assessed against the requirements of the protocols or guidelines, and anything it's either compliant or non compliant. So if it's compliant, obviously the company could demonstrate that everything's been put in place. When we talk about no compliance, it means that you got little element or no element to demonstrate compliance. When this is done, so if there are some non-compliant findings, so what we said here is that the facility have 10 working days, but again, this is just for the sake of the methodology. But obviously, you got a defined amount of time to rectify the issues. And when this is done, we issue a compliance certificate and a safeguard label to the facility. So the idea with that safeguard label, it's getting a lot of traction, and again, it's as good as what the market is putting as a value there. But we've got a lot of big partners, mainly globally, and when you look at the context in Europe or the US, where people are really they start lifting restrictions when there's still a lot of people affected by the COVID-19, so like in Australia, we had a little bit more than 100 deaths in the past, I guess, 2.5 months, when in France, for example, where I'm from, they still have 700 people dying every day, and they've lifting those restrictions similar to what we got here. So you can imagine that the people are quite anxious to go back to their local restaurants and stuff like that. So when an organization, or when people would have the choice between an organization with no measures or with something they can show the world that they've implemented things, we're not talking about eliminating the risk, because this is not possible, but we're talking about mitigating or reducing the risk as far as practically possible. And this label is basically showing the society that yes, this facility, they've got something in place. So examples of like that could present like this on a small cafe, or it's very can vary basically. So you see that there's a QR code as well, so people would basically scan that and have access to a global website. So I'm gonna show you that in a minute. But this is, well, the idea is to really give visibility, and it's not we're not pushed for profit on this one. What we really want to do is to assist the society getting back to normal, and we make this service very affordable on purpose, because we want people to basically regain trust, regain confidence that they can basically go back to their normal life. So that public website, so it's I can show you the demo sort of page that we've got at the moment, and I'm gonna put that across my screen here. So basically it will look like that. So if we go back to our zone here, so people basically, when they're gonna scan the QR codes, they will have access to these and see, for example, this one is one of the company we're working with at the moment. So Park Regis in Sydney. So you can have like people would have information about what's been done. That's an initial audit being done here in the hospitality sector. There'll be some validity information there as well, and basically a link to the website. So that's what this website will look like. And going back into it, and I think that would be the end of this short presentation for me.
Okay, Jeremy, we do have some questions in the chat panel. Jennifer asked, can we get a copy of the self-assessment checklist?
Yeah, this is something we can give, like we probably I wouldn't mind having a discussion first, because there's some obviously like element of it that are quite I suppose like BV centric, so we need but yeah, we can, like, if you can distribute my contact detail, I'll be happy to show Jennifer what it looks like here. Definitely.
Yeah, we'll send the contact details on the email. Katie has asked, how do you audit when the guidelines seem to be always changing?
Yeah, well, this the guidelines change, yes and no, because at the end of the day, we know that social distancing, for example, is something that would remain. We've got things around like personal protective equipment. So this, like there's a lot of fixed elements that are there, and it's mainly around behavior of people and practices. If things are changing drastically, and if we receive information that would basically be a breakthrough, and yeah, this is what needs to be done, of course we'll go back to those guys and the sites that we've audited and just like look at this particular element, I guess. But at the moment, yeah, that's there's a lot of things that would remain and that would be there. Like when you look at disinfecting equipment, frequency for disinfecting, the space to live between people, the layout of the workplace and stuff like that. So this are likely to remain similar. So I guess at best those restrictions might ease a little bit, but yeah, that's we try to adapt as I think this methodology has to be very agile and very flexible. So that it's a good point.
Okay, I've just shared a link to a previous webinar we did with the Green Cap on workplace hygiene management if people are interested in that. Now, Jennifer asks, is this specific only for COVID? Can it extend to things like the flu, etc.?
Oh, well, look, it's it's been developed in the context of COVID, but yeah, at the end of the day, what's in there is to give people confidence. So in the past, flu's been always something like that. Yeah, we hear once a year when it comes to do a flu jab and stuff like that. But it's never, I guess, prevented business to operate. But now if this can be of some importance, yeah, of course this can be done. But again, the whole idea is to give like people comfort that they can go back to businesses and stuff like that. So flu probably was not identified as a key, I suppose, obstacle to that.
Okay, Pedro has asked if we can share the presentation. We'll be sending that with an email probably later today or tomorrow, Pedro, with the video and the slide share. Tony asks, the public website visualizing, quote, safe business is a good idea, but in reality, do you think the uptake will not be sufficient to be effective?
Yeah, well, it's as I said before, it's so like Australia might be in a slightly different situation than the rest of the world. So we've seen like there is enormous traction in Europe around that. Like if you Google Safeguard Bureau Veritas, you'll see a list. I think at the moment we might have like 50 or 60 very large multi-site organization or franchisee model, very keen to push for that. So again, if it's always a matter of a number jumping in to set the standards, and basically others would be like, okay, well, if those guys are doing it, there is a competitive advantage into it. So that's yeah. But again, we've seen a very different situation, very different scenario in all different countries, depending on where they sit with the COVID situation. So like this website, yeah, we believe that it was a great idea to give exposure to businesses, and we try as much as we can from our end to give to put a lot of communication for businesses, like opting for that solution. So I guess it's a double benefit, so they can demonstrate, yeah, they've got good practices inside, but also it's a free promotion for them as well, and good communication, positive communication.
Yes. All right, Jeremy, we don't have any more questions at the moment. So but it has happened before that they start to come in at the end. So I think we can leave it there. I really appreciate you coming online today to present, and hopefully we can do some more informative webinars down the track as well. So thank you very much, Jeremy.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.